So I would like to invite Dr. Sanjula Babhuta to update and acquaint us with new informations which will drive us to think on this aspect. Before that, a brief introduction of Dr. Sanjula Babhuta. Um, Dr. Sanjula Babhuta passed her B Pharm and M Pharm from the School of Pharmaceutical Education and Research, Jamia Hamdard, in 1993 and 1995 respectively. She earned her PhD in the year 2002. She is presently working at Department of Pharmaceutics, School of Pharmaceutical Education and Research, Jamia Hamdard. She has a total experience of about 25 years. She has been credited with several honors. A few of them are worth mentioning, which includes Research Award by AICTE Vishweshwarya Best Teachers Award in 2021, University Grant Commission Postdoctoral Research Award in 2004, APTI Young Pharmacy Teacher of the Year Award 2009 by Association of Pharmacy Teacher of India, Dr. P.D. Sethi Research Paper Annual Award Certificate of Appreciation for the research paper and several other best paper presentation awards. She has also received certificate of recognition for publication in high impact factor journals and citations from Jamia Hamdard. She received the IPA Delhi State Branch Best Performance Award for Outstanding Contribution in 2018. Her research work was selected in Anveshan Research Convention 2019 at zonal level by Association of Indian Universities in the project category of health science. She featured in the top scientist in 2019 global list across all fields. She was selected for AICT UKIERI Technical Leadership Development Program for the year 2019 and 2020 and was awarded level 5 certificate in management and leadership by Chartered Management Institute, United Kingdom. She has attended various international conferences at Singapore, Malaysia, and Vienna. She was also the vice president of APTI Delhi State Branch. She has guest edited thematic issues for Current Pharmaceutical Design, a Bentham journal with an impact factor of 2.412. She is the regional editor of Current Drug Delivery and in Expert Opinion on Drug Delivery and many other research journals. She is a referee for a number of national and international referred journals. She is in the panel of inspectors of Pharmacy Council of India. Dr. Sanjula teaches at undergraduate, postgraduate and doctoral level and has incorporated new concepts in teaching and modernization of the curriculum. Her research has been funded by UGC, AICT, CCRAS and ICMR. She has guided 69 theses at postgraduate level and 24 doctoral research work, and she has more than 300 research papers, and her research work has received more than 11,744 citations. She has been instrumental in organizing short-term training program and national seminars at her faculty and has received funding from various national bodies for the same. So I welcome Dr. Sanjula Babuta. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much for this wonderful, introduction of mine, and giving me an opportunity to be a part of your program today. So, without wasting much of time, I would like to, start on with my presentation. And today I am sharing I'm going to share my insights on combination drugs, combination therapy. So before I do that, I would just like to just a minute. Somebody needs to guide me as to, because how.
Ma'am, it is very simple. You have to go at the top right. There will be an option called share content.
Okay, just a minute.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, are you using MS Team through app? That is MS Team software?
Yeah. So
Okay,
where
ma'am.
do I go? Where do I go?
Yes, ma'am. At the top right, there will be an option called share content.
Yeah, I cannot see anything. Activity chat, teams, files, no conversation, raise hand, more actions.
Ma'am, let me share my screen so that you will be able to understand. Ma'am, my screen is visible, na?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
ma'am, you can see.
madam is visible to me.
Yes, yes, you can see at the top right. Right now, I'm sharing the screen. That's why it is here
Acha.
is the cross sign is here. You have to click here in this area. Okay, right now it is
No, but
showing stop.
this is, yeah, but this is not coming in my team, Just a minute.
Uh, there will be an arrow, ma'am, in your case. Or ma'am, you can also click on Control Shift plus E. This is the
Just
shortcut. Share content. Control, then
just
Shift. Yeah.
just a minute, just a minute.
Yes, please.
Control.
Control Shift and E. E for elephant. E.
Hmm. You know, there is a bar,
Yes, ma'am.
where it is turn camera on, then mute, and then share desktop,
Yes, ma'am.
right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, yes, ma'am. In that share content, na, there will be one option called screen. Screen and window. You have to click on screen. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We can see your PPT. You can bring it on full screen so that it will be visible to us in enlarged form. We can see your PPT, ma'am. You can click on F5 so that it will be come in slideshow mode. Ma'am, you have muted yourself. You have to unmute, ma'am. We cannot hear you actually.
It's okay?
Yes, yes. Ma'am,
I think now it's visible.
yes, ma'am, it is visible, but it is not in full screen. You have to
Oh,
click
no,
on.
on my side, it is full screen.
Mm,
I think let me just go with this only.
Okay, ma'am.
yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am. Ma'am, you may
Okay.
just check whether, ma'am, you just click on arrow so that you can confirm that whether the slides are changing or not.
Yeah, they are.
Because,
They are.
but ma'am, from our side, it is not changing. It is the first slide.
Acha, they are. It's not changing from your side.
No, ma'am, no, ma'am. It is not changing from our side. Ma'am, you may click on escape, then click on F5.
Are are the slides moving now?
No, ma'am.
Not now.
No, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Yes.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Now
Now,
they are. No?
yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. It is
Right?
moving right. Yes, yes,
Okay,
yes.
fine. Fine. So, a very good afternoon to all of you. And sorry for this technical glitch, which is there because we normally we are using, the Google platform. So, a little, delay in the starting. So, today, like I said, I'll be talking about combination drugs, right? And combination drugs or combination therapy. So, till now, we have been listening to monotherapy, but nowadays, if we look at the trends now, so even the pharmaceutical companies are moving towards the combination drugs, and it's a very patient centric approach, a patient compliant. The major purpose of giving any dosage form is that the patient who is there gets benefited out of it. And if you see the prescription nowadays, so you will find that it is a poly prescription, where a number of drugs are being prescribed at one go to a patient. So the major problem that is being encountered is patient compliance. Okay, so in order to overcome this particular problem, in various disease segments like hypertension, diabetes, oncology, nephrology, malaria, combination therapy, tuberculosis, this concept started with tuberculosis. So the combination therapy is being used, right? It is being used. And so let us understand that what is combination therapy. It's a common term, right? It is a common term which has been used both for fixed dose combinations, which are called as your FDCs, right? And they are known as single pill combination, in which two or more components are combined or mixed together, right? Or it can be, the other way of this is that there are two drugs which have been packed together in a unique package, and it is called as a co-packaged combination product, right? The example of the second one is, the anti-tubercular drugs, so streptomycin, isoniazid, rifampicin, they are packed together in a single package, and then the patient is asked to take them together. So this is what is being meant by a combination therapy, right? And it is a two-in-one approach. It's a two-in-one approach which offers synergistic effect as compared to the single drugs. So if I compare a single drug treatment with a combination therapy, so you will find that for the treatment of various diseases, we are using monotherapy. We are using monotherapy, but the problem that we are encountering with the monotherapy is that low efficacy is there. Whenever we are giving anything orally, the bioavailability issues are there. So we are giving a high dose in order to get a optimum bioavailability. So adverse effects are there, because of putting more amount of the drug into it. High cost is there. uh, Bioavailability is low because of problems like PGP flux is there, multi-drug resistance is there, right? So in the last few years, it has been realized that the manifestation of a disease is a multifactorial process, right? So there are a number of interconnected molecular pathways which are involved in the manifestation of a disease. So why do we want to target only one pathway? Why not to target all the pathways which are involved into the manifestation of that disease? So in order to target that multiple pathways which are involved, right, so we are using combination therapy. We are using combination therapy. So the advantage that we get, using a combination therapy is that there's an improved efficacy, a reduced adverse effects is there, and then the cost also becomes less, right? The cost also becomes less. And the drugs in the combination therapy can have the same mechanism, or they can have different mechanisms. So in the subsequent slides, in the slides to come, we are going to discuss about the mechanisms by which a combination therapy acts and the various disease segments. Like I said, even WHO and the other regulatory bodies have approved the various FDCs, right? So they are in the areas of hypertension, diabetes, tuberculosis, malaria, HIV, etc. So now let us see that how this concept of combination therapy and combination drugs, it evolved, right? So when I went into the literature, I found that the first incidence of using the combination therapy was with tuberculosis, right? With tuberculosis, where in 1944 only streptomycin was used along with para-aminosalicylic acid, right? Now in 1952 isoniazid was added to this combination of streptomycin and para-aminosalicylic acid. It improved the efficacy. Okay. In 60s, this para-aminosalicylic acid was replaced and ethambutol was added. Right. So when ethambutol was added, the treatment period was for 18 months. After that, rifampicin was added to this streptomycin, ethambutol, isoniazid combination, and the treatment period reduced from 18 to 9 months, right? So further, further addition reduced it to 6 months. Okay, so this is how the concept of combination therapy came, right? And there are many other examples, where uh, uh, so if I see tuberculosis now, right? So in the tuberculosis treatment, various combinations have been prescribed by WHO, right? So we have a dual drug formulation, which includes your isoniazid and rifampicin, or isoniazid with ethambutol, or we have a triple drug formulation, where isoniazid, rifampicin, and ethambutol are being used, or we have a four drug combination, right? And the various other diseases, where combination therapy has been approved by as FDCs by WHO and other regulatory bodies are cancer, hypertension, diabetes, infectious diseases like HIV, malaria, and tuberculosis. Okay, right? Now, if I look that why, why a combination therapy, why a combination? So if it is advantageous from all the three perspectives. So what are the three perspectives that I'm talking about? I'm talking from the clinical perspective, the patient perspective, and the industrial perspective, right? Now, clinical perspective is, from the doctor's point of view. So from the doctor's point of view, it results in enhanced therapeutic efficacy, right? Safety profiles are more, and there is a reduction in the development of resistance. So many a times you must have seen that we are now talking about MDRs, multi-drug resistance, which is the main, antibiotic resistance, something which is becoming very vast now, and people have started taking notice of it and have started coming up with remedies to overcome this MDRs, multi-drug resistance problem. Okay. From a patient perspective, instead of now taking 4 or 5 drugs together, he takes a single pill which contains both the drugs together. Right. So it's a simplified dosage regimen with improved patient compliance. It is cost effective as compared to single drugs, and then there is enhanced benefits in age related complex chronic diseases. Okay, now if I'm talking from the industrial perspective, the life of the the products increases, right? The So you are increasing the market exclusivity. You are reaping more profits on this. So which results in more sales and profit out of it. So everybody is in a win-win situation. The patient is in a win-win situation, the pharmaceutical companies are in a win-win situation, and the doctors are also getting better response for their patients. So these are, so like I said, that combination therapy now, uh, we are moving towards the era of combination, right? And if you see, US FDA has approved so many. This is just a small list which I have provided out here, but if you go to the US FDA site, you go to this site, so you will find that there are a number of combinations which have been approved by US FDA for the treatment of hypertension, pain, diabetes, hepatitis, HIV, and the list it's a long list. It's a long list, right? Now let us understand that why we need a combination. What is the rationale, right? What is the rationale of having a combination therapy? So the rationale is that, it says, like I said in my first slide also, that disease involves multiple physiological pathways. Okay, right? So why not to target the major pathways which are involved, right? Give the drug simultaneously. Let us target those pathways, and let us try to eradicate the problem by targeting those physiological pathways. Like for example, tuberculosis. So in tuberculosis, the cell wall synthesis is being disrupted, is being inhibited. Pyrazinamide is disrupting the plasma membrane. Rifampicin is inhibiting the DNA synthesis, RNA synthesis, and isoniazid is inhibiting the synthesis of the mycolic acid. So there is a disruption of the bacterial cell wall, and when this bacterial cell wall is being disrupted, the pathogen is getting eradicated, right? The second rationale the second rationale sometimes what happens is, when you are using a monotherapy, right, it is effective on the core symptoms. Yes, it is being it is effective, but then it produces side effects because maybe the dose is high. The dose which we are giving is high dose, so it is resulting in the production of side effects, right, which can be reduced. So if I see the anti-diabetic regimen now, metformin with vidagliptin is being given. So what happens is that metformin is increasing the insulin sensitivity, and it is thereby decreasing the glucagon levels. Okay, but metformin results in various side effects. Weight gain is there, hypoglycemia is there, gastrointestinal side effects is there. So when it has been combined with vidagliptin, right, so what is vidagliptin doing? It is inhibiting this DPP4 enzyme, right? It is again increasing the insulin sensitivity, it is decreasing the glucagon levels, right? Because of the addition of this vidagliptin to this metformin, the dose of metformin gets reduced, and therefore the side effects which are associated with this metformin, they are also getting reduced, right? The next is, you know there is a improved tolerability with the use of combinations, right, as the doses administered. So what I said in the last slide, the same out here, right? So it is like, because if the dose is getting reduced, obviously the tolerability to that treatment is more, right? And if I see, the um, all these antihypertensive, all these antihypertensive drugs. So in this hypertensive drugs, we will see that, uh, you know what happens is that reduction in dose is there, and the administration of two different drugs, they can synchronize the biodistribution and pharmacokinetics, right? So if I see in hypertension, the blood pressure elevation is a multifactorial process, right, and it cannot be combated by a single drug. Therefore combination therapy is effective. So in this, I have given an example of enalapril with lecardipine, right? So what is being done is that this enalapril is inhibiting the renin angiotensin enzyme, and it is reducing the blood pressure, whereas this lecarnitidine, it's a calcium channel blocker, right? It reduces the constriction of the blood vessels, and it reduces the blood pressure. Okay, and then the combination of this enalapril and L-carnitine, it reduces the side effects, the dose, and therefore it provides better efficacy to the treatment. Okay. The next is the pharmacokinetics of the drug is improved, when you are giving it as a combination therapy. Okay. So what happens is that the presence of one drug can modify the effect of another drug by altering its site of action, changing its biological mechanism, or changing its absorption, distribution, metabolism, and excretion. Right. Now, here I have tried to exemplify, how the combination improves the pharmacokinetic profile of the drug. So we have these two drugs with us in entacapone and levodopa. So what happens is that when levodopa is being used for the management of Parkinson disease, the treatment with levodopa, on long-term treatment with levodopa, it results in motor complications, right? Like inadequate or excessive dopaminergic tone, which results in fluctuating effects of levodopa. Okay. Now, when I'm giving this catechol inhibitor, together with this levodopa, and entacapone is this catechol amine inhibitor, which is being given together. So it manages this, it prevents the peripheral metabolism of levodopa, which results in, inhibition of the fluctuating dopamine levels, right? Resulting in improved efficacy of levodopa. So the problem which was associated on long-term use of levodopa, that is, we were getting a fluctuating dopamine levels, it is being prevented when we are giving entacapone. So we have a better pharmacokinetic profile when this combination is given together. Okay. The next problem that we see is that when we are giving a drug for a very long duration of time, right, resistance develops. So anti-malarials, antibiotics, oncology, the anti-cancer drugs. So a lot of resistance problem is there. So doxorubicin, right, a drug which is being used as an anti-cancer drug, it's a substrate to PGP efflux. So when it is being removed from the site of the absorption, we keep on giving the drug and resistance develops. So curcumin is being given, right? Curcumin is being given. So this curcumin, it prevents the efflux, right? It prevents the efflux. It prevents the efflux taking place by the PGPs, and therefore it helps in reducing the drug resistance. So the efficacy of doxorubicin to the cancer cells increases, right? The next is, adherence. So like I said, I have been talking again. So antihypertensive drugs in case of hypertension, so we have understood that it's a multifactorial process, right? A lot of pathways are involved. So let us target those particular pathways, and because of that, we are getting a better patient compliance and a better efficacy as compared to the monotherapy. So what are the various factors we need to take into consideration? It is not that randomly, we can. So if you look, if you remember, if you recall, you will find that in India, the DCGI once took cognizance of the fact that there were a number of irrational combinations floating in the Indian market, right? So they decided to, they constituted a committee, and the committee looked into the various combinations, and the combinations which were not providing any therapeutic superiority over the monotherapy. Those combinations were banned, right? Those combinations were banned. And many a times what happens is that the center is not giving me the approval for the combinations, but the state licensing authority gives the approval. So there is a tussle, going on, and the center is now taking uh, they are coming up with certain policies, where you need to show that your combination is superior over the monotherapy. So what factors, we should take into consideration when we are deciding for a combination? So if there is a clinical need, right? So as I said, the manifestation of a disease, it involves pathways, different pathways. Or there is a problem with one drug, you are adding a second drug to it, and then that problem which is associated, like for example, a drug is resistant, or it is a substrate to PGP efflux, right? So can we add a PGP inhibitor with that particular drug? Okay, so if I add a PGP inhibitor with that particular drug, the bioavailability of my drug, first drug, increases, and when the bioavailability increases, obviously my therapeutic efficacy increases. So we have to take into consideration that what are the various needs, what are the various rationales which should be there. So the first is, if there is a clinical need, the combination is providing you a synergistic or an additive effect, right? The efficacy which is being obtained is greater than the individual components. The overall effect, uh, what is the overall effect? Are we reducing the dose? Right? Is the combination able to reduce the dose? Because if the dose is getting reduced, yes, the dose related side effects will obviously get reduced. The cost of combining the two drugs, we have to take into consideration the commercials also, because anything which is not commercially feasible, it is very expensive, is not going to be purchased, right? The risk to the benefit ratio, whether it is going to result in a patient compliance or not, and like I said, the ability to address issues like resistance. Okay, so these in this next subsequent slides, few slides, I am going to talk about certain combinations, for certain disorders. Like for example, it's a cardiovascular disease, right? So cardiovascular diseases, uh, I have, so I use, just a minute, yeah. So uh, cardiovascular diseases, so if you see, lifestyles are changing. Because of the change in the lifestyle, we are all being getting susceptible to various hypertension and whatnot, whatnot. So one of the report which we saw, that more than 25 million deaths are going to be there, like because of the cardiovascular diseases. This combination, it minimizes the blood pressure variability. It provides a synergistic action, right? And because of this minimization of the blood pressure variability, there is a reduced risk of myocardial infarction and stroke. So another combination, atenolol, which is there in the market, is atenolol with hydrochlorothiazide. So atenolol is a beta blocker, right? And hydrochlorothiazide is a diuretic. So here the atenolol, it relaxes the blood vessels, and hydrochlorothiazide, which is a diuretic, it inhibits the sodium and the chloride reabsorption from the distal convoluted tubule, right? And because of this, there is decreased fluid retention and vasodilation. So your blood pressure comes down, and you get a synergistic effect when you are giving atenolol and hydrochlorothiazide together. Okay. Diabetes, another segment where combination therapy is widely being used. It's a metabolic disorder, right? So the prediction is that by 2040, more than 642 million people will be diabetic, right? What we need to do is, we need to preserve our beta cell function, and we need to delay the deterioration of the glycemic control. Okay, right? So combination is doing the both the things. It is preserving the beta cells, and it is delaying the deterioration of the glycemic control. So this is another combination, right, where rosiglitazone is being combined with metformin, and this combination of rosiglitazone and metformin has been approved by US FDA in 2002 for diabetes management, right? So what is rosiglitazone doing out here? It acts through this peroxisome proliferator activated receptor pathway, and it inhibits or reduces the development of insulin resistance, and it increases the peripheral glucose utilization. Okay. On the other hand, metformin inhibits the hepatic glucose production in the body and improves the lipid profile. All these together leads to decreased glucose levels, and you have an addictive effect, when rosiglitazone is given with metformin. In case of malaria, right? So malaria caused due to Plasmodium falciparum parasite. The WHO has recommended the use of artemisinin based combination therapies. Okay. The problem is the resistance develops with monotherapy, so combination therapies are being used. Okay. One of the combination which is very widely being used is lumefantrine with artemether, right? Now, this is being used for the treatment of chloroquine resistant uh, Plasmodium falciparum malaria. So, when a patient is not responding to chloroquine because of the resistance, so this lumefantrine and artemether combination is being used. It's an FDA approved combination, right? And this is a mechanism which where I'm not going to go into detail much, right? Another combination is for gout, where aciclofenac and febuzosac is being used, right? So now, what is the use of this? This febuzosac, it's a xanthine oxidase inhibitor, right, which helps in lowering and maintaining the serum urate levels. Now, because of this, because of the excess production of the uric acid, the inflammation is there, and that inflammation is called as a gout flare, right? So this first drug, which is febuzosac, it reduces the uric acid production, right, by inhibiting the enzyme which is responsible for purine breakdown. And aciclofenac, tackles the inflammation, which is called as a gout flare, and thereby a synergy is being obtained, right? Antimicrobial drugs, gentamicin has been combined with ampicillin, right? So what happens is gentamicin has a hydrophobic nature, right? And because of this hydrophobic nature of gentamicin, it is not able to penetrate into the bacterial cell. This ampicillin, it degrades the bacterial cell wall, right? And it provides access to the aminoglycosides to reach to this target site, which is the ribosomes, thus resulting in better antibacterial effect. Okay. So these are some of the patents which are there on the combination drugs which have been approved. Right now, if I see, so the first part is the first part of my presentation was on combination drugs or combination therapy, and then I have tried to explain this principle of combination therapy using some examples, whereby it is being used in cardiovascular disease, diabetes, oncology, for the pain, for the antimicrobials, for malaria, for tuberculosis, right? But if I see, when I'm giving all these things together, uh, the problems that I see with the monotherapy is bioavailability, right? So same problems I'm seeing with the conventional uh, combination therapy also, which is bioavailability. And the reasons, reasons for can be poor bioavailability, right? Bioavailability can be poor because of low solubility, low permeation, hepatic first pass metabolism or intestinal metabolism, or because of efflux due to PGPs which are present inside the body. All these things, because if the bioavailability is less, we need to give high dose. Because of that high dose, there are dose related side effects, right? There is non-targeting of the drug which is being given, and development of resistance is there. So whatever problem is there with the monotherapy, the same problems are there with the combination therapy also. So in order, to overcome the issues which are there with the monotherapy, we are using nano carriers. So similarly, in order to overcome the problems with the combination therapy also, we are using nano carriers. Okay. So I hope everybody of you know that what are the various nano carriers which are being used. So they can be your polymeric nano carriers, they can be inorganic nano carriers, they can be lipid based nano carriers. Lipid based nano carriers are your micro emulsions, nano emulsions, nanolipidic particles, solid lipid nanoparticles. A lot of them, dendrimers can be used, micelles can be used. So there can be a number of nano carriers which can be used. Okay. Now, what are the techniques which are being used, to encapsulate the drug using nanocarriers. So there are three kinds of combinations, which are being used when I'm preparing a nanocarrier for the combination drug. Now the first approach is that uh, you have a problem with one of the drug, right? But you do not have problem with second drug. Okay, so the drug which is having a problem of, let's say, poor bioavailability, you can put it into that nanocarrier, and you can let the second drug remain as the free drug, right? So you have one encapsulated drug and the second drug is your a free drug. So this is combination type 1, exemplified, using an example of curcumin with beta arthritis, right? Curcumin has a problem. First of all, this combination, beta arthritis and curcumin, is effective in the treatment of malaria. It provides an anti-malarial effect. How it provides an anti-malarial effect? Curcumin and beta arthritis, it it inhibits, right? It inhibits the activation of the necrotic factor, which results in decreased response to pro-inflammatory cytokines, and it also prevents the expression or the cytoadhesion of the molecules in the endothelial cells. This together results in killing of the parasite. It results in decreased adherence of the parasite to the cells, right? And thereby it results in an anti-malarial effect. But the problem with this curcumin is that it has low bioavailability, low solubility, poor absorption, high metabolism, and rapid excretion. Right? So since this is a problematic drug, we have put it into a lipidic based nanocarrier, which is SNEX. Right? So this combination consists of encapsulated curcumin and SNEX along with free beta arthritis. So this is the first approach which is being used. The second approach which is being used is that both your drugs have problem, right? Both your drugs have problem, but you cannot combine both the drug together because there will be a issue of incompatibility between the two drugs. So what do? You encapsulate both the drugs separately into nanocarriers. So you have a free drug A, you put it into nanocarrier 1, and you have a free drug B, you put it into the another one. Example of this is rifampicin and isoniazid, right? So what happens is rifampicin and isoniazid, they undergo drug-drug interaction. So we cannot combine them. The problem with them is that both of them, they get degraded in the gastrointestinal tract. This results in poor efficacy. They are being used for the treatment of pulmonary tuberculosis, right? So what has been done? Rifampicin separately put into SLN, isoniazid separately put into SLN, solid lipid nanoparticles. When they were evaluated, the rifampicin encapsulated in SLN, it showed 4 times lesser degradation as compared to the free rifampicin, and isoniazid when encapsulated shows 7 times lesser degradation as compared to the free isoniazid. This resulted in targeted action, improved bioavailability, reduced side effects, and reduced dose. Okay. Then the third is that take both the drugs together, put it into a single nanocarrier, right? Put it into a single nanocarrier. So example of this is tamoxifen with quercetin. So tamoxifen, it's an estrogen receptor modulator, right? Quercetin, it is an anti-proliferative agent, and it also helps in the treatment of breast cancer by inhibiting carcinogenesis, altering the signaling pathways, and inducing apoptosis, right? But both of them have a problem of poor bioavailability, and the reasons are poor aqueous solubility, high first pass metabolism, efflux, right? Extensive metabolism, etc. So both of them have been put together in SNEX, right? And this resulted in improved bioavailability and improved efficacy for breast cancer. So even we have worked on this similar lines, where we, worked on some combinations. Like for example, the first combination that we worked on was bromocriptine and glutathione. We loaded it into a nanoemulsion for the management of Parkinson disease, right? So the reason was that this bromocriptine, right, it is very effective in the treatment of Parkinson because it's a dopamine receptor agonist, right? But the problem with this is that it is a BCS class 2 drug. It has low bioavailability because of poor aqueous solubility and extensive first pass metabolism, right? Glutathione, the problem is again glutathione acts as an antioxidant, and it has been reported to play a very important role in Parkinson. But the problem is poor bioavailability and poor oral absorption and degradation. Okay. So that is why they were loaded into nanoemulsion and they were given by the intranasal route for the treatment of Parkinson, right? So these are some of the results that we got, right? And they were promising results. The second one which we have worked on is, 5-fluorouracil with resveratrol for the treatment of skin cancer, right? So 5-fluorouracil is the main drug, which is being used for the for skin cancer. But when it is given topically, the retention is very less. So we made a nanostructured lipid carrier, and we had a synergism using 5-fluorouracil and resveratrol. Okay. And this was converted into a nanostructured lipid carriers. This is how we made it. We got permeability studies were done, in vitro studies were done, and we had better results. And then we went on to the animal studies and the cell line studies, and we found that the prepared formulation was better as compared to the conventional combination therapy. Right. The third work which I have reported is, where we developed a lipid nanocarrier of selegiline, again a drug being used for Parkinson along with quercetin. So selegiline is a substrate to PGP, and it was combined with quercetin. Quercetin is a PGP, efflux inhibitor, and therefore the bioavailability of selegiline got increased. Right. And this is our research which we did, and these are some of the publications which have come out of our work. So this 5-fluorouracil and resveratrol work has been published in 2 journals. The first journal, in the first paper, we are talking about the preparations and the characterization. In the second one, which was published in International Journal of Pharmaceutics, the in vivo and the animal studies have been reported. Similarly, this bromocriptine and glutathione paper has also been published. And this is the selegiline, work which has been published. Since I'm extensively working on these combination drugs now, so we also have published a book by Elsevier on nanocarriers for the delivery of combination drugs. Right? I cannot do everything alone, right? So I have a group which helps me in executing my work. So Professor Javed Ali, we work together, and these are my research scholars, who are working on combination products. So I would just like to conclude by saying that there is a lot of scope in this particular area, and nanotechnology can help us overcome challenges associated with conventional delivery of combination drugs. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Can we open for the question answer session? Hello, ma'am. Can we open?
Please. Please go ahead.
Okay.
Please.
The participants are requested to type their question in the chat box, or they may personally interact also with ma'am. So there are some questions coming to us. The first question is from Ms. Nidhi Srivastava. She has asked, what was the reason behind the banning of 344 such combination drugs in 2016 by Government of India?
because when I went into the into it, it okay. So for example, aceclofenac combined with ibuprofen, right? So there was no rationale for such combinations being because we were not getting certain, like I said that you need to prove that there is a superiority in terms of efficacy, when you are combining the two drugs together. So I was talking to somebody who is in the drug regulatory department, right? And they were he has done a survey on these combinations, the fixed dose combinations, and there he was saying that the problem comes that many combinations are approved by the state licensing authority, right? Not by the DCGI, not by the center. So they don't have they're not able to see that what kind of a documentation and what kind of efficacy profile has been submitted. So that is why, when this committee sat, they decided that the combinations which were not of any utility, and they were a lot of pharmacologists and doctors, sat in that particular committee, and then they took a decision of banning those combinations which were not effective combinations.
Thank you, ma'am. Another question from Mr. Sanjay Kumar Yadav. He asks that why FDC's fixed dose combinations are not being frequently used in the market, although they are cost effective.
Yeah. So now, see, if you go and see the US FDA site, if you go and see, so you will now see that many FDCs are coming into the market, right? People are realizing, like for example, uh, a very common FDC, which I will tell you is, which many of you must have also used, is pantoprazole domperidone combination. So it is said that when acidity is there, so it is also, you are also having nausea and vomiting, right? So why not to give it together? Why not to give it together? Anti-diabetic drugs, anti-hypertensive drugs, oncology. So yes, the market is evolving. New combinations are coming, and I think that in the times to come, we are going to see many such combinations in the market.
Ma'am, another question from Ms. Nidhi Srivastav. What do you think about the success of combination therapy in COVID 19?
Uh, so which combinations are we talking about in COVID-19?
Nidhi ma'am, can you specify about which combination you want to know? We have unmuted the participants. They can directly interact with ma'am.
No, I think our question was about the success of any combination drug. Is there any success story of combination drug therapy in COVID-19?
Uh, since this is such a vast thing, that uh, you know and I, to my mind right now, I don't recall any combination therapy which has come, for COVID-19. I think most of the therapy that has been giving it has been a monotherapy, for COVID-19.
Right.
Ma'am, there is a question from Ms. Deepika Garg. She wants to ask that are not fixed dose combination contradicting with the principles of patient specific therapeutic dose regimen preparation?
So like I said initially, that combining drugs, it is not a, it's not child play, or it is not something which is random, that you think, okay, let me combine an antihypertensive drug with an antihypertensive drug, or let me combine an analgesic with an analgesic, right? So you need to see, and I haven't gone too much in detail about it, but when we are thinking of combining two drugs together, so we are doing extensive studies where we are finding out what is the combination index. What kind of an effect are we getting? Are we getting an additive effect, a synergistic effect, an antagonistic effect, right? So detailed studies need to be done. They can be your in vitro studies, they can be your cell line studies, they can be your preclinical studies, where you see that what is the kind of effect your combination is giving, right? What are the various pathways which are involved in that manifestation of a disease? Are they acting on the different pathways? What is the need? What is the significance? What are the benefits that you are obtaining, right? So all these things need to be seen, and then only you decide on a combination. Okay, US FDA is not going to give you an approval, if it is a senseless combination. Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. Another question from Miss Richa. She wants to ask, what are the regulatory requirements for combination therapy based clinical trials in India and US?
Yeah, you please need to see that the requirements on the site, the official site of the various regulatory bodies, as to what, because now they have laid down, since FDCs are there, they are coming up in the market. So these guidelines have been laid down by the various regulatory bodies, and you can visit on their site and you can see that.
Ma'am, Mr. Abhijit wants to interact with you. He has
Yeah.
some questions.
Ma'am, it was a great lecture. We have learned a lot of things, and you have inspired us with the combination therapy. Ma'am, I want to know. I'm a Sutix person basically. I'm highly interested to know that when we go for a combination therapy based formulation, how we may decide about the dose. For example,
So
if we go.
yeah. So what we need to do is that, first of all, we, like for example, I'm working a lot on combinations, right? So supposingly, I have worked on 5-fluorouracil and resveratrol. So how do I decide on the dose of the two drugs, right?
Yes,
So
ma'am.
yeah. So, because one is my synthetic drug, the other is my natural drug. I can play with my natural drug, but I have to keep my synthetic drug constant. Okay, right?
Okay.
Uh, Now, what is the ratio in which I have to use it? Is it a 1:1 ratio? Is it a 1:2 ratio? Is it a 2:1 ratio? Is it a 3:1? So we have done cell line studies first, right? In the cell line studies, we have found out the IC50 value, right? Then we
Okay.
have found out the combination index. Okay, I have
Okay.
found out the combination index, and you know after finding out the combination index, I have tried to see that in which ratio, my combination index is giving me a synergistic or an additive effect. Okay. And which combination, the ratio is giving me the better cytotoxicity as compared to, the single drugs. Now, for example, the IC50 of 5-fluorouracil is coming out to be, let's say, 25 micromolar, right? But when I'm using a combination, that in that combination, the IC50 gets reduced to 15 micromolar. Okay. So how I have decided on this is that, first I have gone for determining the combination index, using different sets of ratios, and then from that I have decided that which ratio is giving me the best, and then I have extrapolated that ratio in terms of dose.
Right, ma'am. I mean, usually in our general formulations, what we are actually widely using QVD and other kinds of that is a design-based approaches. So, do you suggest that that thing can be also useful? Because, ma'am, we also have to see the solubility of the drug. Because
So
yes, ma'am.
yeah, so see, first of all, when I'm telling about the dose, like I say that, you know, I am giving something, bromocriptine I'm giving, right? So when I'm giving bromocriptine, the bioavailability is 50%, right? And the dose of bromocriptine, let us say, is 10 milligram. So orally, when I'm giving bromocriptine 10 milligram, 50% bioavailability is there. Only 5 milligram is my effective dose. Now I have changed my route. I have said I am not going to give it orally. I'm going to give it intranasally, right? So I'm now going to start. Initially, my dose is going to be 5 milligram only, because I have avoided that first fast metabolism effect which I was seeing when I was giving it orally. Okay.
Right, ma'am. I mean, your let's say,
CBD and all you should apply, you know, when you are doing the optimization, when you are doing
yes,
the optimization.
right, ma'am.
Yeah.
And you have very nicely mentioned about the, you also highlighted about the nano carriers, ma'am. Ma'am, is there any specific, or during your all experience, have you found any kind of specific kinds of novel drug delivery systems which are widely used in combination therapy, like microsphere?
Yes, we have sustained release and controlled release, but as far as the nanos are concerned, you know, we still do not have any combination nano carrier in, you know, in the market as such. Nano carriers for even monotherapy are very less, so combination का तो अभी है ही नहीं.
Right, ma'am.
Basically,
Thank
this is academic research.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It was a great time with you. Learned a lot of things. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for providing us an insight of patient-centric pharmaceutical drug product design. You have enumerated various problems which leads to development of rational combination of drugs to address problem which is related from clinical perspectives, patient perspectives, and individual industrial perspectives. And as we all know that design thinking consists of multiple facets, so we have to carry all these things and consider all these parameters before thinking in a better way, technical way, to get a better result for centering the patients. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Monica ma'am is here. I think ma'am will interact.
Monica, ma'am.
There are some fluctuating.
There is some technical glitch. Actually, Monica ma'am wants to, I think she will interact with.
Yes, but his network is getting down.
There is a network problem.
Let me check again.
It's okay. It's okay. You know, I think the presentation is now complete.
Yes.
So the Q&A session is also over. So all the best to all of you for this FDP, and thanks for inviting me. Right?
Thank you, ma'am, for accepting our invitation. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
We may meet at 2:30.
So we will have a lunch break and we will meet at 2:30. Thank you, participant.